I only currently own 5 books. The best book on systems that I've ever read was Aesop's Fable. Every one of them is a relationship map. And it never talks about them that way, which demonstrates the power of the metaphor, the story. Well, almost everyone loves to buy, almost no one likes to be sold. To get from data to information, we have to understand relationships. To get from information to knowledge, we have to understand patterns. And to get from knowledge to wisdom, we have to understand principles. We spend most of our lives on autopilot, doing things which are contradictory to the things that we say we believe, and we don't even know that we're schizophrenic. This is the pile of money that went in my pocket at the end of last year because you didn't participate in the 401k program. Next year, do you want this money in my pocket or your pocket? And you left. Quit believing you're so damn smart, because you're not. The majority of organizations, I'm convinced, are ruined by management, not employees. I cannot change your mind. Mm-hmm. The best that I can possibly hope for is to provoke thought. Mm-hmm. Though I have to learn to do that in a way that doesn't discount you, because if I do, you become defensive. I have to ask you questions that you're highly likely to be able to answer, all right, so that I don't position myself as being smarter than you are, which is what systems thinkers have done forever. Mm-hmm. Is, you have a problem, let me teach you systems thinking because you're so dumb, okay? Mm-hmm. And you need to learn this. Well,
non-starter.
Okay?
Yeah.
Go out and start over again. It's like, for years, I used to go to people and say, we need to develop a model, which for a person that doesn't already understand models and know what the value of them is, the person knows they don't know how to develop a model and doesn't want to look bad, to do something wrong, because we've been taught from early childhood that we live in a trial and error world and it's not good to make errors. If we could just adopt a trial and learning mindset, we'd be further ahead. So there was an approach that I devised, which I finally labeled as the stealth approach to modeling. Mm-hmm. So I would sit down with someone who was wrestling with this problem and ask them to help me understand it, because I'm not there to help them. They understand their problem better than I ever will. I'm there for them to help me understand. And as they begin telling me about it, I ask them if I can take some notes. And I start taking notes, but my notes look like a model. Right? But I never mention it. And sooner or later, it gets to a point where I can look at my notes and begin to ask questions about things that are there or aren't there. Mm. Yes, it never fails. 15 or 20 minutes, the person is looking at my notes saying, well, we ought to add this piece and connect it to this because of this relationship, and this relates to that. And they're doing it, and we never talked about what they're doing. And there's no need to talk about what they're doing because it's developing understanding. And that's the important part.
When you say understanding, you're just talking about interactions, understanding interactions.
Well, they're understanding the relationships, and they will sort of understand the interactions that we went through, but there's no need to talk about what we went through because it was experienced. It was learned in the process. Okay.
I'm curious about the books, papers, authors that profoundly influenced you along the way. You already mentioned a couple, starting from Stafford Beard to Mike C. Jackson's book around creative holism for managers, Ricardo Semler's YouTube videos, TED Talks. So anything else that you'd like to call out?
I only currently own 5 books. Mm-hmm. Everything else, there's a lot of them that I bought on Kindle over time, but I don't read books anymore. I mean, it's a waste of time. Gemini doesn't know it, or ChatGPT or Claude. If they don't know it, I don't need to know. And I actually had a long conversation with Gemini one day about my passion for creating archives of information. And I used, the brain and Rome research and Obsidian, and just one after another. And when I finished with this conversation with Gemini, I deleted all of them. All of my repositories gone.
Why?
I have one left that I created with Recall. And the only reason it's there is so that I can keep track of the projects I'm creating on an ongoing basis, because I found out there are so many of them, I can't remember what I've done and what I haven't done. So, and that's the only reason it's there. The Fifth Discipline by Peter Senge, the original 1990 version. Uncommon Sense, The Life and Thought of Ludwig von Bertalanffy. And Management Cybernetics by Barry Clemson. And that I do have a copy of Sturman's Business Dynamics, but I don't know if I'll ever open it. I read the first 40 some pages to get to the point that he explained the first loop to me. So I don't know. You have the knowledge of the world at your fingertips if you have a smartphone, and use it. Okay. I mean, if this Notebook LM and all the rest of them, if there's something in particular you really want to learn, tell it to create you a lesson plan and then follow the lesson plan. And you can follow the lesson plan probably without ever going to another resource except them. I told it that I wanted it to teach me something and assume that I didn't know anything about it to begin with. And we carried on a conversation for, 45 minutes to an hour investigating this topic. And it was just leading me to a level of understanding on a topic that I knew absolutely nothing about.
Interesting. I know over the years, you probably read a lot of old books. Like, I still feel there are some really old books that's full of insights that no LLM knows about, at least in my experience, and especially in my own mother tongue, which is Tamil, which has a lot of old literature. And that's one of those areas that I am researching to find systems, ideas in old Tamil literature, and how it ties everything down to like human psychology, stuff like that. So that's an area of research that I still feel, at least there's a lot of stuff in old books that people ought to read. And unfortunately, we read a lot more newer books rather than older books. I think that has always helped me.
Well, I read a lot of Aesop stuff, but in terms of the stuff that was done back in the 30s and 40s and 50s, probably the best book on systems that I've ever read was Aesop's Fable. Okay. Every one of them is a relationship map.
Yeah.
Though, and it never talks about them that way, which demonstrates the power of the metaphor, the story. So, and along the way, I read a number of books which had bits and pieces that I retained. I mean, I read Spencer Johnson's The 1 Minute Salesperson back in the 80s sometime. And though I don't recommend that anyone actually read it, because there's only one sentence in it that I took away. Well, almost everyone loves to buy, almost no one likes to be sold. And, the greatest takeaway from Aesop was never improve a part unless it improves the whole.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I mean, context agile knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is wisdom. Okay. Um, so, because to go from data to information to knowledge, you have to increase the context that it's related to. But when you get to wisdom, it's pretty much context independent. So it's sort of like getting over the hump. So it's context agile knowledge, which I think is wisdom. But I'm not sure I've ever seen that presented that way before.
Mm-hmm. I think Aesop is the one that I think you're using his definitions or terminology, I should say, for data, information, knowledge, understanding, and wisdom.
Well, actually, Akoff and I really deviated on that trajectory because he put understanding as one of the elements in a trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
And I treat understanding as what takes us from one point to the next.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that to get from data to information, we have to understand relationships. To get from information to knowledge, we have to understand patterns. And to get from knowledge to wisdom, we have to understand principles. So our diagrams were similar, but not identical in that context.
Yeah. Words don't mean the same thing to us. So rather than seeking definitions, I think we should seek descriptions. Okay, what do you mean by understanding? And what do you mean by knowledge? Which kind of leads me to my next question, which is, what is your epistemology? As in, how do we create knowledge? Because that one fundamental thing would punctuate your entire approach to problem solving, right?
Oh, well, Eric Chant, the self-evolving universe, presented this diagram about things that varied from absolute complete confirmation to absolute complete novelty.
Mm.
And between those two ends, there's an arc. And the experiences that happen on that arc are an opportunity for learning to move us away from the absolute novelty toward the confirmation. And my thought about learning is it's evolving patterns of understanding. If I give you 4 or 5 numbers out of context, they're absolutely meaningless. What does 4 mean? Okay. You have no context for understanding it. Though, if I begin to tell you that the interest rate on my savings account is 4%, well, 4 has a meaning. There's also a meaning there if I relate that the interest is used with the principle to create interest, which is added to the principle, which creates growth. Now we have a pattern that I think represents knowledge as opposed to just information. And the awareness that that set of relationships produces exponential growth is another level of understanding.
Your description of the progression from going from data, information, knowledge, and there's understanding involved every step of the way, but from various dimensions. My question around epistemology, I think I should clarify. Epistemology is theory of knowledge, as in how do we create knowledge? Or philosophers usually argue about like ontology, like the reality that's out there, versus epistemology, like your knowledge of it. And the universe, as we know it, is much more than what our senses can perceive. And what we see is a small sliver. The same is also very true to the social realm. We largely rely on our own personal experiences to drive our worldview, even though it is 0.0000, like there's 8 billion people. Your perspective is a small sliver of it, actually what's going on. And so many times you will see consultants, management consultants, who actually tell you, hey, I know what the ontology is, the reality out there, how to clarify it, how to manipulate it. Whereas there are some consultants who actually say, okay, before you talk about the ontology, let's talk about our epistemology. How do we make sense of the world? How do we create that knowledge? We don't have direct access to the external world. And, when photons hit your retina, that's electrical impulses as a function of like how it's an abstraction of an abstraction of an abstraction. And then your brain has to construct everything that I see. The green color leaves out my window in the front. There is no green in the universe. It's inside my brain. And similarly, there is no sound, just vibration of air molecules, which are then interpreted as sound. I'm not trying to deny that there's reality out there, like solipsist would. But how do we make better models of the world out there? And so I'm coming from that deeper perspective.
Some things we learn by thinking and some things we learn by experience.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of things that we learn by experience, we are not consciously aware of, which is where most of our biases come from. From an interpretation of experience without a conscious awareness of that interpretation. Versus espouse theories and theories in use, okay? We spend most of our lives on autopilot, doing things which are contradictory to the things that we say we believe, and we don't even know that we're schizophrenic, okay? And you see it in corporate America on an ongoing basis. The manager who says, I have an open door policy, but he's never in his office. Or quality is job one, but it's always the last item on the agenda for the staff meeting. Or employees are our most important resource, and then they treat them like shit. It goes on and on and on. And the thing is, you can't tell them, okay? The question is, how do you create a realization that's accepted? And you have to find a way to create an aha moment for the realization to happen. One of the books by the Heath brothers called Moments, I think, and there's a video on YouTube where this CEO has been trying to get people to participate in the 401k program for years and with dismal results. So he calls this whole group of employees into this conference room. And when we walk in, there's this big pile of money sitting on the conference table. And he walks in and he says, this is the pile of money that went in my pocket the end of last year because you didn't participate in the 401k program. Next year, do you want this money in my pocket or your pocket? And he left. Okay? Tell me that wasn't an emotional connection. So he provided an aha moment for them. It's back to the comment I made about take a clear insight compressed in time, delivered in a manner where the audience discovers it. So he didn't tell him anything. He asked him a question.
Yeah. A couple of things come to my mind. I think it was David Ogilvy that said, the trouble with market research is that people don't think what they feel, they don't say what they think, and they don't do what they say. And, when you started the response to this question, that's where you started, how irrational we all are. And the power of that story, that aha moment that CEO created, I think that solves the problem for the people that were present. On the completely other end of behavioral psychology is the idea of nudge, in which I think the best story that they tell, or the success story that they claim, is by turning it on by default, the 401k election, by turning it on by default up to at least company match. And that in turn has resulted in by far the best outcome that they have ever expected. At least that's my understanding.
You have to take action to turn it off.
Exactly. It's opt out rather than opt in. So the power of defaults and why Google pays Apple billions of dollars every year to be the default search engine on Safari. People who get human psychology are ready to pay that kind of price. And the rest of us sit there and, yeah, as you say, go about life on autopilot, I guess. Awesome. So I think the next area that I would like to explore is one of the primary areas where I have found a lot of benefit is when it comes to being a manager or a leader inside a technology corporation and trying to solve problems. Take these insights from systems thinking, complexity, cybernetics, and completely reframing the problem situation. Everywhere there's a problem statement, you just substitute the word problem with symptom. And then you start looking at, okay, what's the layer above that? What's the layer below that? Look at the interactions and so on.
Mm.
I know you spent a lot of time within corporate America. And are there any case studies or stories where you've helped other entrepreneurs or founders with these ideas? Anything that you want to share with us from that perspective? I know a lot of people find value from all of the free stuff that you put out there. There's a lot of stuff that you publish out there, but I'm curious more about the practical engagements, if you had any.
I found myself in being responsible for a proposal development department that had been beat up for years, because the proposal development department is the last group of people that touch the proposal before it goes out the door. Writers and editors and graphic artists. And the thing was, they were extremely capable, though there were things that I needed to know that they would not tell me. They absolutely, out of fear, So I got the managers that reported to me in a conference room, and I made them do a SWOT analysis on me. And the rule was, well, there's two rules. I don't care whose comments they are. I will only ask questions to understand the feedback. I don't care whose feedback it is. And I'll be back in 30 minutes. And I left. Probably the longest 30 minutes of my life, because I know what's going on. And they thought I was off my rocker. And the feedback I got was rather constrained, but there was some. So I took the stuff that they provided and I posted it on the wall, and I worked on it. And we did it again in 3 months and another 3 months. And every time they got more and more direct with their feedback. And 18 months later, when I left, I didn't need to be replaced because this group was so solid. And in one situation, we screwed up pretty bad. And I got a whole bunch of people in a conference room, and they were ready for me to look for somebody to blame. And I said, what did we learn? All right. We had a very nice discussion about what we learned and what we could do to help ensure that things didn't go south in the future. So it's this whole idea of trial and learning, because if you're not trying, you're not learning.
Yes, for sure. So, CyberSyn community is mostly technology entrepreneurs, executives, cybersecurity executives and practitioners for some of the largest companies. And they are finding insights from systems thinking, complexity, and cybernetics to be useful. I want to make sure they hear directly from you about your perspectives on improving their effectiveness, or any other messages that you may have for that specific community.
So I used to listen to a lot of Tom Peters audio. And one point he talked about, he had heard about this turnaround artist who would walk into one of these failing companies in a relatively short period of time, maybe a few months, the place would turn around and it would be in the black. And he said, I had to meet this guy because I needed to find out how he did this over and over again. And he said, when I got to meet him, I said, how do you do this? And he said, there's no secret. I walk into one of these places that's almost at death's door, and I walk around and talk to the people, and they tell me what the problems are. And I say, why don't you fix them? And they do, and I get rich. Okay? I mean, it's back to Semler's model. The people know what the problems are, and they know what the fixes are. Get the hell out of their way. Quit believing you're so damn smart, because you're not.
Yeah.
I mean, the majority of organizations, I'm convinced, are ruined by management, not employees.
I think that's a great message and a plea for epistemic humility, that you don't know enough, and respect for people on the ground and getting out of their way so that there can be some self-organization and autonomy. Only then can true creativity come, not under coercion. Awesome. That's a great message. G, any other question that I should have asked but didn't, or any parting remarks?
Well, I've enjoyed this. I'm pleased that I didn't know where it was going. Sort of meandering through time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time and sharing your insights. I know we had zero prep for this, and this entire conversation was just, dynamic as it was unfolding. And so I enjoyed the conversation as well, and I hope the listeners do. Gene, once again, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you much. Take care. Bye.